Hey guys, so in this video I'm actually going to go over one of my games I played in the Gold Coast Rapid Championships last weekend, because I noticed a lot of players in this rating range make this common mistake. They're afraid to castle sometimes, and also how to utilize your opponent's king being stuck in the center and how to press forward your attack. So stay tuned. So in the following game I opted for the move 1e4, c5 and c3. This goes well with your Smith-Morra Gambit repertoires, and also if you're looking for something aggressive but don't want to go into the open Sicilian variations. Knight f6 e5, knight d5, d4 is one of the main lines. Knight f3, knight c6, pawn takes d6, bishop c4, knight b6, and here one line is to play bishop b3, but I'm not particularly a fan of this because after black captures on e5, because it's a very aggressive opening as white, we don't want to trade queens, so the only way to keep queens on is to play d5. But after knight a5, knight c3, and pawn goes to f6, I really feel that black is able to eventually sort out a way to get his king to safety, and I'm not a big fan of this position for white. So instead, I would opt for the move bishop to b5 here. And the main line of this variation continues pawn takes, knight takes, bishop d7, knight takes on d7, queen takes, and knight to c3. Here, black should stop white from pushing the pawn up to d5, which would win the knight on c6. So black should play e6, but let's say if black plays a6 instead, then we can actually just capture the knight on c6, queen takes, and when you have an isolated queen's pawn position, make sure you use the pawn to your advantage by pushing it further up the board. A lot of people are afraid to do this because they feel it becomes more of a weakness, but here we need to prevent black from playing e6. After the move d5, queen goes to d6, black is threatening to play rook d8, and this would put pressure and attack and win the pawn on d5. So we need to attack one of the defending pieces, which is the knight on b6 here. Rook goes to d8, and here we can just capture the knight, queen takes. Our pawn on b2 is being attacked, but it doesn't really matter. So first we play the move queen a4 check, rook d7, and as I mentioned before, sometimes instead of defending directly, try to look for a way to set up a counter threat or counterattack instead. Because we're so far ahead in development, white can just castle the king, and if black tries to take the pawn, then we can even go for rook b1 and some variation like queen takes, rook takes b7, queen c8, and rook b1 looks to be very, very strong for white because of rook b1 winning the queen. That is why black should play the move pawn to e6 here. In the game I castled bishop to e7 and queen g4, which is one of the main lines for white here. And here black played a mistake, which is the move pawn to g6. So the first thing you should recognize is if your opponent makes an inaccuracy, why it's an inaccuracy, and how you can try to take advantage of that inaccuracy. So obviously this one, the black king doesn't want to castle to the queen side, so the black king wants to castle king side. It's a lot safer. But after the move g6, we can play the move bishop to h6 and just prevent this option altogether. Black played the move pawn to f5, which is also an inaccuracy, but we have two options here. We can play the move queen to f3 or queen to e2. So queen to f3 looks like the more tempting option at first, but then you should start to realize that after queen f3, if ever a6 is played, then you'll have to trade the bishop for the knight, but you don't really want to trade queen. So after queen takes c6, you might lose a tempo by dropping the queen to a different square anyway. So because of this, I played queen e2, king f7 was played, and now it's important that you recognize your plan is to push the d pawn. Okay, maybe it's also to put pressure on the e pawn, so you might be able to play moves like rook e1, but here soon black is going to play rook to e8 and then develop his bishop to f6, after which black is relatively okay. So it's around about this time in the game where you need to be very, very accurate in your moves, and just be aware that your position may not stay good forever because your opponent may untangle. So rook d1, looking to play a particular pawn push, as we'll see. Rook to e8 was played, and now it's just the right time to play this particular move. If we wait too long, then bishop f6 would open up the rook with our queen, and we might not be able to play it. So pawn to d5. Key move, opening up the center with the king stuck on f7. So knight takes was played, knight takes, pawn takes, and here I played the move rook takes d5, which was the whole point of this combination. The queen can't capture, of course, because bishop c4 would skewer. So queen e6 was played instead, and here instead of trading queens or playing anything like that, which is also very, very good and should go on to win, I set up a very nice and a sneaky tactic here with the move bishop to c4. So I think this is one of the first times I ever achieved this tactic in an over the board game. My opponent played the move queen takes e2 here. So I was hoping for bishop takes e2, after which the bishop would be retreated to a different square and off this diagonal. But can you spot the winning move here for white? So we don't take the queen, we just play rook takes f5 instead, and we get a nice double checkmate. So this is one of the first games I've ever had this happen over the board. So as you can see, there are a few mistakes that black made in this game, but it's very important that you capitalize it in your own games, because if we waited any longer, then black would be able to untangle quite freely, and then the game would be a whole lot different from what we got. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you on the next one in the series. Till then.